Luckily, I was incredibly paranoid the whole time and just felt like I had a bad stomach about it all, so I got a bunch of buckets of water and dirt ready in case the whole barn went up in flames or something. Mind you, we're in a barn full of hay and dried up everything,
dry,
real old wood, and probably like 100-year-old barn or something. And so anyways, my whole left leg was on fire. And what did I do? I didn't stop, drop, and roll. I ran and jumped and screamed until one of my friends who wasn't on fire grabbed one of the buckets and threw it on my leg and put the fire out.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't help but think about it after the fact that it's not even that stop, drop, and roll didn't cross my mind. It's that nothing except for was going through my mind.
I need the fire out. And oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, fuck, it's just to be able to maintain your wits in a situation like that. It's not likely. But then you also have cases of human beings where, like, where was that? Was it? I'm not sure if it was a Tibetan monk, but some monk somewhere in protest set himself on fire in meditation.
Was that not in Vietnam and set himself on fire? Actually, that happened a couple of times. There was all kinds of people who were setting themselves on fire in protest to that war. And
you really have to protest something pretty deeply if you're willing to set yourself on fire.
Yeah. Well, man, holy moly. One of the things that even to tie into this moment that I think kind of changed this public reaction to warfare was that in Vietnam it started to be like televised, and rather than in World War I of this glorified sense of it as people enlisting and thinking it's going to be this fun, jovial thing that they're going to go do and they'll be back real soon.
Oh, I can only imagine like the kind of propaganda the government was giving people to get them to enlist too. Like,
some of those old ones of like a German soldier bayoneting this person that looks like your mother, and it says like, "Will you do nothing till it comes to this?" And it's like we definitely went to war because our reasoning was we're going to go, and the Germans are a threat to our Christian way of life and our sense of empire. And Canadians joined up and went over and died in droves because
and they were also a real threat to our way of life. You know,
I don't know if I think that war was pretty imperialistic in nature. I think a lot of it is just a lot of very secret assurances that happened behind closed doors between different empires, and the fact that a prince got shot and just like
it was
a powder cake that most certainly happened. The march of imperialism in World War II is most certainly a different thing, but I think to have this changeover of people really starting to see these gruesome bits of warfare really change their perspective. And especially you hear some of these stories of having someone embedded with the 5th Marines doing a patrol in North Vietnam or the South Vietnam, and walking around in the bush, and as they're broadcasting live, is the first guy in the patrol gets shot and drops and dead on sight, and they got that on film. And some young mother back on the stateside just watched her own son get killed before the State Department letter comes in, "Dear so-and-so, your son fell in combat operations." But it really started to make people go like, holy shit, this is not at all what I thought this was, and turns out I want this to stop. And the people really came out in droves. And the only other war that has no precedence of how much it was opposed was Iraq. And it was, I think for all the people who like, one thing that has started to happen is the idea of some of these wars, man, is like they seem to be immensely opposed, because we have had these images splashed in our face so much now that we have a pretty good understanding without having to be in the falling B-17. As we've heard these stories and we've gained these perspectives, and it's really starting to like sicken us, and it really should be this disgusting last thing that we should be doing. Like, we should, if you're fighting, it should be for your absolute survival.
Yeah.
You should be picking these battles. It shouldn't be just because some young prince somewhere got killed and for God, Queen, and Empire, we go to die for things that are beyond our understanding.
Yeah. Do you what was I just gonna say here? Well, so yeah, I mean, the first thing that popped in my head is just simply that definitely that plays a role in how wars come about, especially it seems recent ones.
Yeah.
And then there's also no understating the proclivity for human malevolence and evil. You can read about things that human beings have done to other human beings consciously, and perhaps even enjoyed it. And and then if you read those things as if they're about you, because you're a human being, then well, I guess it's so okay. I'm working my way to some sort of a point here, but I haven't quite articulated it before, so I'm working through it. But I guess there's an idea that a lot of modern people have, and maybe it's kind of a new age idea, and I don't mean to cheapen it in that way. I simply just aim to suss out its potential reality or lack thereof, maybe even, but which isn't something I would like to come to a conclusion of. So humans are undoubtedly capable of evil and atrocity, and there's the notion from specifically Jungian psychology, which Jordan Peterson is a great exponent of. He's really great at articulating, because Jung can be hard to read, simply because he's almost like too profound for anyone to even, he's deeper than people have even bothered to people can't even begin to claw away at the layers that Jung is already handling, or was handling. But so you have the human capacity for evil and malevolence and atrocity, and that could be said to be latent within every single human being. And then you could also say that unless that is made conscious by virtue of the individual aiming for such a thing, because you read stories and you take them as stories about you, the same way that I take stories about heroes as being stories about you, being about human beings, because it's not that we're just evil, obviously we're good and evil. And so if you don't integrate that unconscious proclivity, then it runs the risk of coming out eventually with its own volition, completely without your conscious control or intent. And then you might wind up doing things that you would never have done under your own conscious control, but you were naive and thought that you were harmless, so you just you think the whole I'm a good person story, I could never do that. But then people can become resentful and bitter and angry, and then given the opportunity, one step at a time, you get pushed. Like you hear about how these guards in concentration camps in Germany, it wasn't just that they started out shooting pregnant women naked in the snow in the head. It was one step at a time over a long period of time. And it was actually optional a lot of the time, like you're allowed to go home, you don't have to do this, but then your brothers are going to stay there and do these crazy things, you don't want to leave them hanging, and then next thing you know, you're doing these crazy things, and then maybe a part of you, sick twisted part of you, enjoys it somehow. So point being, I'm wondering if it's possible, because I think this is the question, is it possible to absolutely avoid war? Could we get to a point as a race, as human species, that we actually can come to terms with all this kind of stuff and sort ourselves out to a high enough degree that we're not just naive weaklings who can be pushed around by the whim of our own unconscious desires whenever they decide to manifest, but instead be conscious and awake and integrated and know what we're capable of. And then we can actually avoid it because we're not naive, because you can't really avoid something that you're naive about. But if we're collectively aware that we could all descend into that kind of sheer destruction, then maybe we would have a hope in hell of avoiding it. And I guess my question is, could we someday avoid it?
It kind of goes a little bit to the how I see things, and I would sum it up as I am the optimistic pessimist. I see things in a really shitty manner, but I dream of seeing them in a better one. And I'd like to think that at one point in time, absolutely, this possibility does stand a chance, but I guess it is very easy to become bogged down in like the negativity and being like war and conflict is just our natural state of being. It just seems like the thing that we're always going to wrap around to, whether it be for something that we morally justify as like stomping on the rights of others is okay to us because we've come up with a viewpoint of how that's okay, rather than maybe meeting people at an agreement table.
Yeah.
But
come to the agreement table.
Come have an agreement with us. But I think there are moments where the situation has been on the fast track to war, and people have been working insanely hard to try to throw a wrench in the gears of this bigger thing that's working against them. And there's even a couple moments of coming up to World War I where these armies are mobilizing and people can really start to see these storm clouds gathering. And I think it's the man Portaleas is the one last guy who's talking to this Russian statesman, and he says to him, like, man, please, I beg you, like, call off mobilization. Like, if you don't see what's about to happen, like, this will shatter our understanding of who we are and what, like, our basic systems that are going on here. It will be the end of empires. Crowns will fall. Societies will collapse. And this guy says, no. And he says, I'm begging you, in the last sense of all that is good and pure, please, no. And this guy says, once again, no. And he rises to his feet and says, like, here you go. Well, it's my dutiful honor then to tell you that we're now currently at war. And I hear, like, a month later, like, 1 million men are dead. And I think it was, like, the lives of 10 million more are killed in this conflict. And it really did shatter the prior understanding. And it really gave way to a sense of new understandings of things. And I don't know, I don't think I'm articulating this, but throughout all conflicts, there's always been naysayers. And whether it's someone who is a conscientious objector or just a straight up protester or something, I don't know if there's ever been a conflict that everyone has single-handedly been on board with. I don't know if we're ever about to experience alien planetary invasion where they're going to try to wipe out the human race. Maybe that will be a
common enemy.
Like, for our very survival sake, we must unite against the aliens. And
once we get rid of them, we can go
back then. Listen here, motherfucker, I got a score to settle with you.
Yeah.
But there have been times where, well, certainly people have put aside their differences for a common enemy. But
I wonder if, because one of the ways that the answer that pops into my head to the question is the only ethic. I mean, it's hard because it would have to require of everyone to jump on board with an ethic. And there are racists out there and psychopaths, and what are you going to do with them? And I mean, you're never going to have everyone on the same page, but it's the martial artist ethic or the old samurai stories. Like, there's one of my favorite dialogues between a samurai master and a student, and it's just that they're gardening, and the apprentice asks his master, you're always teaching me how to, fillet people apart with